I do agree with that. I think that when we were testing it against the Rogue as well, the regular Secret Rogue, I should say, sorry. The Secret Rogue, I do think, was having some pretty unfortunate draws at the start there. As you can see there as well, I've been asked to give a public service announcement to not be surprised if we see Bankyugi wearing glasses. Because, yeah, he said, I think he had a sty or something he was saying, and I don't know if he didn't want people to see it or something, but anyway, he's just been outed to the entire viewing public of Grandmasters, so sorry if that was in confidence, Bankyugi. You still look blooming great, though, so don't worry.
Very stylish glasses, and he will be facing up against Glory's Rogue first, so no Highlander shenanigans at the moment, but this is another one of Bankyugi's signature decks that he's queued up, the Galakron Dragon Priest. He's been very partial to this build of the deck, which still has the value engine, and for the most part, I've liked what Bankyugi does with this priest against other matchups, although we had some questions about his play in the mirror the other week.
Yeah, I think his play style or his proclivity with the deck is very much for an aggressive tempo play style rather than for a very late game value oriented matchup, because he clearly understands what the power spikes of the deck are in the early game, whether you're looking at Kaj and Raise Deading that, if you're looking at Cabal Acolyte plus Wave of Apathy that we see here as one of the infamous power spikes with the modern build of Galakron Priest. And it becomes very clear that he understands all of that at a deep level when he's playing these tempo matchups.
It's true, but the funny thing about the Rogue versus Priest matchup is, although it could start as a tempo matchup, later on it can devolve into a bit of a clown fiesta, a bunch of generated cards on either side, but I still think that the player that manages their resources best has a huge edge here. But already for Glory, the Pharaoh Cat giving Generous Mummy is -1 big resource, I would say.
Yeah, that is pretty disastrous against any deck. One that runs Sethic Veilweaver and a bunch of 1-mana spells that become 0. You can't really be playing that card. I would be extremely surprised if we saw that come down. Yeah. The Power of Creation, though, is a nice backup prize, though. Just being able to throw that down on turn 8 is huge.
For the late game, definitely seems like that's going to be Glory's big punch, but for now, he's just going to be chugging along with the small minions, try to get to the Jandis, but I'm worried about turn 4, turn 6. Stutter from Glory, he could really use a secret passage soon. For Bankyugi, though, he doesn't actually have a great way of answering this little bit of chip damage without the Wild Pyro in hand.
He doesn't necessarily, but I think for Bankyugi, he's going to quite clearly understand here, he doesn't need an immediate answer. This is a 3-6 on board, which unless there's, the Vendetta, the Eviscerate, is going to be very, very effective at answering this board. And even if there is, he has Cabal Acolyte into Raise Dead next turn. This is looking okay for Bankyugi, absolutely. But that is a huge draw for Glory. The value of Miscreant cannot be underestimated.
Yeah, it gives him something to do this turn, and he did pick up one of the the tempo lackeys to get rid of the Hothead there, but I figure Glory would have wanted a value-oriented one for the other lackey. For Bankyugi now, though, looks like we are just going to see a steal on pretty much any of these minions.
Yeah, exactly. It really doesn't make all too much difference. It's just been very prescribed plays for Bankyugi so far, just following up with the standard theory of spending all your mana and trying to keep up as much as possible, because this is a surprisingly non-reactive deck, I think we can say, in Priest in the early game. It mainly wants to do its own thing and let the Rogue kind of crash against that.
And the Jandis on curve makes a lot of sense. I think in the early game, Rogue really wants to go in before Soul Mirror becomes an option, and they fall back on the value plan when the aggressive push in the early game doesn't necessarily work.
If he can clear everything off here, which I can't exactly remember with the board covered up, there is some thinking to make Rotnest Drake the illusioned minion, because you obviously are afraid of Shadow Earth Death.
It's true, but I think with 1 death in the list and 2 Pyromancers, I would almost always just put the illusion on the smaller minion here. The 3 difference in attack is a very big deal, because we can see Glory's initial game plan has been all about the aggressive push, and as it stands, Bankyugi doesn't have healing in hand, still no Pyro, nor a death. So is it going to be digging with the Cleric?
Digging
or
for
you could just
what,
go
though?
for the big combo of Cabal Wave.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like it only is good to steal a minion. It also reduces the attack on board quite significantly this turn, which is worth a fair amount. There's also the potential for a Sethic turn if you're confident in which minion you want to shoot with the Holy Smite.
Potential. I kind of am looking at the cleric to try and bridge the gap towards his Soul Mirror turn, because next turn we're looking at a potential Soul Mirror, but if he goes cleric and fishes for that, then he would have to use the coin to activate the ball, which makes everything quite a bit awkward in the end. So he is going to go for the Wave of Apathy and potentially just Soul Mirror a bit later on.
Yeah, this is the one kind of shield. Yeah, you don't want to see that. But this is kind of like the shield that Rogue has against Wave of Apathy. If you just go with a big Edwin and it gets stolen, you can usually pack up shop straight away. But if they have this wide board of small minions as well, it makes it so much more difficult for the Priest to answer. And when you throw Grom into the equation in terms of whether or not you can hit lethal, I think it starts to become a lot more amenable.
That is huge to have in his back pocket. The one thing Priest can usually rely on is Rogue having limited burst. Usually the double eviscerates are the amount of reach you can expect. But for Glory, if he picks up Backstab to go along with that Grom, it could just be 10 from hand. This turn, though, is looking just a little bit slow. Tricks, and it might not even be worth bumping into the Cabal Acolyte to damage everything.
Yeah, I mean, the Lackey can be used to make that a little bit less painful, just as literally +1 attack.
True, true. And the dagger, and then he can value trade the 1/1. Oh, it looks like he did put the illusion on the Rotten Estray.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's not just Shadow at Death that is better too, it's also the fear of Holy Smite, but with the pickup of Wild Pyro, that is the card that Bankyugi needed to see. Now, all of a sudden, I don't mind the look of Cleric of Scales to try and find the Apotheosis.
True. One thing Bankyugi has to be a little bit concerned about is Plagiarize. The secret package from Glory's list is double dirty, double plagiarize, so he'll know right after playing a spell what he is working with. But sometimes Rogue can put down Plagiarize on the turn with a wide board to say that if you're going for a big clear with Pyro, I get all your spells back.
And now this is a tough one for Bankyugi, because I think quite clearly what he wants to do here is go coin Crimson Hothead, now that I look at it. Like, it's massive amounts of stats on the board, very, very impactful play. But the problem is that then his Cleric is no longer active, so he's choosing to get a much weaker board presence right now, or not even fully clear the board in exchange for the spell off of Cleric, which is, I think, a smart deviation.
I think it's smart too. I would definitely look at Soul Mirror here just because that is the biggest board clear and it's nice to have that in hand. It's going to be active as soon as next turn. But the Renew has a strong argument too because he could just be looking towards a Sethic turn. And he did just go for a big sweeping clear this turn. So it's not all that likely that Glory goes wide enough for Soul Mirror the next turn.
I really liked that turn from Bankyugi. I think there was a lot of fear of, or there was a lot of bait into going for killing off the Miscreant with a double activation when only one was actually needed there when you break it down a bit more closely.
True. The only thing you're scared of is Shadow Step, really, to generate more value for Glory, but this turn is quite awkward indeed. We're looking at a tempo Blackjack Stunner, maybe, to just get questing up to 4/4.
Yeah, I believe Generous Mummy is still 100% out of the equation because he knows that there is a Sethic Veil Weaver in hand if he's been keeping track, which obviously can just end the game on the spot if you're able to chain all the cheap spells.
And the 4/4 is a huge deal because it is just out of range of Holy Smite, but of course Sethic makes miracles happen. And start with Renew on the Sethic as well.
Yeah, that's the interesting point. Do you value your health at this point enough to... Well, you don't point that at your face, but do you point the Renew at your own face or at the Sethic?
I think you want as many chances as possible of clearing this questing adventure, so I want more and more spells. Whispers of Evil gives him another shot at clearing the questing adventure, but Apotheosis is more of the Sethic cycle. It's really close.
It is indeed. Shadowed Ruin is...
picked up. Yeah, the Ruin is super interesting because you can think about leaving the questing now.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't hate the idea of just Holy Smite into Kaj, right? You're pretty likely to survive the turn, and then Apotheosis with Ruin next turn is incredibly powerful. Interesting.
The Apo now, maybe trying to save a bit of health, but oh my goodness, he picks up an even bigger chain. Okay, this one is going to his face. Good balance of resources picked up for Bankyugi.
I'm not sure if I actually agree with the end there, though. Like, I appreciate that Apotheosis gets him an entire extra card, which is worth a lot. But I think getting Kaj stuck on the board there, just to have 2 minions in play, much stickier, much more likely to actually get an immediate activation of Apotheosis with the Ruin next turn, I think was more valuable.
True. And oh my goodness, all of these minions are below Shadow Word Ruin range, and outside of Flick, they're all not soul mirrorable either. So Wind Fury Harpy is a nightmare for Priest to have to deal with.
Well, it would be usually, but the Rush... Oh no, sorry, the Wind Fury. It needs Wind Fury and Rush, right, to attack again?
Right. I think that's how it works. If you soul mirror a Wind Fury minion, I don't think you're allowed to attack with it again.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back to like Gyrocopter. Does that allow you to attack again? Yes, but with just these, I don't think so. Yeah.
And so these are 8 damage apiece. Grom backstab is lethal!
What?
A top deck for Glory!
Oh no!
Disaster!
Oh, poor Bankyugi. Oh my goodness.
The cheeky eyebrow raise at the end there. To be fair, even if the Grom wasn't lethal just yet, he was still in a pretty bad spot. I think he would have to, like if Glory went for trades with the Wind Furies, he would still end up with 1 Wind Fury at the end, and then a Grom on board, which Bankyugi didn't necessarily have an answer to, but that top deck really adds insult to injury.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to say this. Bankyugi did not make a mistake at the end there. The play to stay alive was obviously Apotheosis on the opposing minion and then go for the Shadow Word Ruin. But he had no information at all. You cannot make that read. So I think Bankyugi did the best thing he could possible. Again, I think overall with the Kaj turn, I'm still a little skeptical in terms of how it did end up working out there for him. But the main thing is that it was just a very unlucky way to end things. And Glory, obviously, as he was starting to run out of value, needed pretty much exactly that kind of a lethal combo. Most of the time,
That's
I think
true.
Bankyugi comes out in front there, but not this time.
The turn you were talking about with the Apotheosis plus the coin renew on his face, that combination of 2 things really shows that Bankyugi wanted to be as safe as possible. I think
Sure.
by buffing his Sethek Velweaver with Apotheosis, he was trying to bait the questing into a trade so he wouldn't take the face damage and just follow up with the Shadow Word Ruin. It gave him less board presence, but I think from his perspective, he was sat there looking at Glory's hand being very light at the moment. There was just a generated Reborn and a generated Mage spell. So I think it was perfectly reasonable for Bankyugi to go for that. But what can
That's
you do?
fair.
Sometimes Dragon's Horde is a little bit too much.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm picking him up on a minor issue there because I think for the most part his play was very, very strong with the priest. Sorry, he was trying to lock down the board, make sure he had enough value, and sweep things up along the way. That Pyro turn, I think, was especially inspired. But this is what Rogue does. It generates things that you can't always play around. You just have to work to the odds to the best of your knowledge. And I think Bankyugi did that very, very well. Rogue getting through, though, against the priest is a very, very big deal, though, because that is a very close matchup, all things considered, and does mean that the priest still needs to take the win against the likes of either the Demon Hunter or the Mage left for Glory. Our current competitor going through to the World Championship in Glory is off to a fantastic start. And when we come back from the break, we're going to find out if Bankyugi, as the newcomer, can turn things around. We'll be right back after this. You're watching the first match of the day for playoffs weekend, an incredibly important weekend in the lives of everyone still competing because we have 8 competitors in each region vying for that one singular spot in the World Championships to be held in December. We also sadly have 4 competitors fighting out to not be relegated, as we of course here in Grandmasters Asia Pacific already sadly said goodbye to Rivius and Kin this season. One more player does have to go. But we get to focus on the good part first, Gia, at least for one of the players in this match, because Glory, already going through to the World Championships, is now trying to get, as he tweeted out earlier today, the back-to-back qualification, just to try and prove that he is truly the best player in Asia Pacific.
What a story it would be if he managed to get the back-to-back. It's unheard of in GM so far, I believe. And Bankyugi also would have a very big storyline going for him if he were to win, because he is definitely the underdog in this match, I would say, and just one of the lesser known players making it through the Masters Tour system and getting all the way to Division A with a very, very impressive performance. For the next match, it looks like he's giving his priest another go.
He is. And already we're seeing one of the spicier plays that Bankyugi is partial to in Mind Render Elucia. I do expect it to be mulliganed away because his opponent is on the play rather than on the coin, and this is the big impact of the nerf, in my opinion, from 2 to 3 mana. Sorry, is that it's less powerful as an early game play. You can't just play it on 2 and it's incredibly powerful. You need a little bit of extra help to get the work done.
I completely agree. Well-timed Elucia versus Mage can be backbreaking, but I think this early on, because, as you said, Bankyugi is on the coin, it would just be -1 hand space, which is, a big reason why a lot of Priest players are cutting Elucia altogether. Bankyugi, though, has been a fan of just early Elucia when he is off coin, and has gotten probably the best results out of that.
Already for Bankyugi, I think that was deceptively tempting to just tempo out a Cleric of Scales. Like, he has the Raised Dead in hand to get one back if he finds a dragon. It's unlikely that your opponent is just going to ping on turn 2 as Mage. Maybe it didn't do quite enough, but with the Pyro, it could have been used to weaken the board at least.
It's fair. Maybe it picks up a soft trade on a small minion from Glory, something like a One Maker or this Solarian, but I'm not sure. Like, if you don't even have a dragon in hand, is there that much value in raised deading the Cleric
That's
early
fair.
on?
That's fair.
Oh, Cram Session. But his Solarian is dead this turn, most likely.
Yeah, still taking it though, I think, just to start cycling through, because this hand is very nearly very powerful. It just needs, obviously, the Evocation, the Magic Trick, the Ray of Frost, any cheap spell, and it starts popping off.
Yeah, 1 Evo away from Magic. Oh, this feels terrible. Just having to tempo out the Wild Pyromancer with no sign of a dragon. Bankyugi's hand is really not coming together, and he also can't Elucia very well with it because Glory's response would be to dump all of Bankyugi's resources.
I will say that this hand from Bankyugi, or really actually both players' hands here, are close to getting the job done. Obviously, Raised Dead becomes a little bit more palatable. Makes the Pyromancer more palatable to just throw it down. But for Bankyugi, he needs the dragon for this to start popping off. For Glory, he needs the cheap spell of pretty much any kind to start activating this Apprentice Cyclone, get the Mana Giant down as well, and things start looking a lot better.
But for now, I think he is fine to just go for Violet Warden. It's the exact shape that Priest does not like to deal with, and it potentially sticks for Cram Session later on.
A mana away with the coin as well from having an extremely powerful turn. So for Bankyugi, it's just going to be a stall turn, I imagine.
Yeah, cycle towards some better resources. There's not really a good target for Holy Smite here. Silence you can use to get rid of the Arcane Missiles, but maybe it's just Apotheosis to spend his mana. I don't know.
Apotheosis on what? Just the...
Just give it a bigger stat, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. I really don't hate your idea of silence, actually. With this many cards in hand, like, if I was going to pick Apotheosis, I imagine it would be to go on the Wild Pyro rather than just throwing it down here.
Oh, interesting. I would think there's a decent chance that a 4-5 would stick against Glory, or maybe soften up the Violet Warden, but since it does look like he's gearing up for stealing the Violet Warden the next turn, then you don't even want it to get popped up.
Alright, I can agree 100%. This is the turn to go in when you have 2 apprentices. You can draw 2 cards, get the missiles back to your hand as well.
Oh, and the magic trick. Giant getting very cheap. Learn Draconic.
Tick, tick, tick. All of these fantastic cards.
Optimizing the missiles as well by taking the trade into 2. Okay, a bit unfortunate, but I mean, can't complain about the rest of the turn. The Giant can come down now, I think. Sorry, no, 1 mana short.
Yeah, 1 mana short. But still, I mean, the important thing is setting up for these very, very powerful plays. He's running this without Conjurer's Calling as well, which is definitely a big hit in this particular matchup, as Mana Giant will probably be nothing more than what it seems, as just a pathetically weak 0 mana 8/8.
Imagine. Anyway, this is a big swing for Bankyugi. He can steal the Violet Ward and trade away the Apprentice, so it's actually a huge deal that this one maker stuck last turn and dodged the last missile.
It really is. That cannot be overstated how important that was for Bankyugi, because even if Glory has to spend another 2 mana here playing out the second one, that's a lot worse than just having it in play already.
For Glory, there's Shinvala Apprentice, but the spells are a little bit too expensive, so he could take a turn with Cobalt's Falcon and just play out the Giant as an 8/8. You're getting to the point where Soul Mirror is always going to be a threat moving forward, so you sometimes just accept the 8/8 on the board.
Yeah, I don't hate that idea. I think that if your opponent goes with the Soul Mirror here, that's okay, because you still then have a fairly powerful Shenvala setup.
So, it's a bit interesting here, because you can get down spells into the Giant, but then you have less spells in hand for Shenvala the next turn. I'm not sure how he's meant to optimize.
Oh, wait, can he... Oh, no, he can't stop it. I was going to say, can he load up the board with these 0/2s so that Soul Mirror does then not clear his Giant, as it looks like we're having a spectator issue, hopefully, rather than an actual gameplay issue for these players. But I think the important thing is that the Giant there is always susceptible to Soul Mirror, no matter how you try and set that up as Glory.
Yeah, I think so. I can't quite remember the board state from Bankyugi, but your idea with the the mirror images was pretty interesting, because there were still 2 minions there, and maybe you could just put the Giant on the far right and try to dodge Soul Mirror, but we're not exactly sure of the board state and whether that's possible at the moment. It's always scary to Shadow Word Death as well. What I'm interested in is how he navigates the next Shenvala turn if he does see a clear.
Well, we're going in for it right now, as Bankyugi obviously does not have the Soul Mirror, which Glory was, we'd have to imagine, so afraid of. Instead, just going in with a pretty low value Cabal Acolyte, interestingly enough here. I guess just trying to take this opportunity where he is ahead on board to absolutely lock it down, make it incredibly difficult for Glory to swing it back.
Some strange order as well. Like, he could have given him, like, if he took the trades into the O2s before the Cabal Acolyte, then he could have something with attack guaranteed. Maybe he did want something with taunt, not sure. Or more likely something went on that we weren't aware of before we entered the turn. But it's also a big deal that he hasn't played Illusia yet, because Glory is about to pop off once again.
That was very interesting as well to see Glory pick the Thalnos over the Explorer there, because I was thinking just any value that you can pick up at this point is incredibly important, and being able to discover a dragon is a very, very big deal.
It's true. I think he was trying to set up a bigger combustion turn, which I would be on board with this all-in game plan if you could also fit in Counterspell, just to play around Soul Mirror.
Yeah, it doesn't quite come together, does it?
Well, he is going to go in with the Giant now. And just hope that the mirror isn't there. And oh my goodness, it's there!
Okay. Okay, well, first of all, we need to look, is that actually the play on this turn? Because he does have a decent board. Is there any Pyromancer stuff he can set up? Because basically, for the Soul Mirror to work, he has to make some pretty ugly trades first.
I don't think I would mind board parity here for Bankyugi. So it's the 4-2 into the, yes, Shenvala, 2-1 into Lab Partner, and Mana Cyclone anywhere but the Thalnos is a clear. And you do kind of want the draw from the Thalnos, so.
Yes, indeed.
2-1 and 1-3, 2-2 in take your pick.
Must consider.
And I think Old Glory here knows exactly what is going on with these weird trades in terms of what is being set up for. Yeah, you have to sack that into something, doesn't matter what. Except, as you said, the Thalnos.
Ah! Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Oh yeah, this is optimal. My bad.
Yeah,
this is the best one because he does get Mana Cyclone as a 2-1.
Nicely done. Yeah, it was awkward because, like, if he'd had more board space, he could have stolen a full health Shenvala first and then tried to kill it off on the opponent's side. And even though it's very possible that there was a way to optimize that yet further, I think that was a very good spot from Bankyugi to take as good as you can get.
It's complicated indeed. Glory is going to try his best to refill with the Raz, load up the counterspell, but it honestly feels futile after you've seen Soul Mirror to get down the counterspell.
Yep, this is where, barring any extreme punishes, things can start to look very good for Bankyugi. He can't get the guaranteed steal this turn, I believe, on the Raz with Cabal Acolyte and Wave of Apathy, but he can start to set it up at least.
I wonder.
Correct, because the spell burst goes off before the pyro proc.
Right.
And there's also a secret that he has not accounted for just yet.
Your mind
I don't
is not
mind
your
starting with like Cabal Acolyte and the Feast just to see what the secret is.
Don't you want to try with Wave first? Like, I think like if it's literally anything other than Counterspell and you're just guaranteeing yourself a 0-2 being stolen, you're pretty sad about that.
I was thinking there's a way to save the wave for this turn, but there's
Okay.
actually not just that many targets left after having seen a giant. So it might...
dance, puppet. Dance.
Oh, unlucky.
Oh, a free clear.
Sure, why not?
We're looking for spell damage for Glory. Can start with Arcane Breath and go fishing for like a Primordial Studies, maybe?
Yeah, it's obviously fine on the 2-3. I don't think there's much benefit to casting it on the 4-6, outside of like very specific options.
This is quite good. Just go for the Fireball to get rid of the Cabal Acolyte. It's board presence. Seen the Soul Mirror.
Yeah, it's quite a lot of board
A
presence.
Soul Mirror.
This is
Still the
the
natural
push.
one in Bankyugi's deck.
I'm losing track of what's happened in what game now at this point.
Yeah, there is.
Okay, good.
Ay, ay, ay. No dragon, no choice. Gotta go for the Galakrond and hope to hit one of the two on the right side.
Yeah, unless you think there's something better in your opponent's deck, which I think is a much too scary prospect to go for at this point.
And Bankyugi is gonna take a card from his hero power as opposed to healing for 2 guaranteed. I think that is definitely warranted. His hand doesn't do very much.
Yeah, I think if he was pulling drastically far behind, I think there'd be a lot of merit to deliberately making your hand worse. He's not in that spot quite yet, though, as Glory does get a pretty impressive Conjurer's Calling there.
Yeah.
Probably to go on the 5-drop?
I thought it would go in the 5-drop too. I think you gain average more stats by splitting a 5 mana 3/5 than a 6 mana 6/4.
Interesting. Massive deal, though, either way, just to amp up the damage. And Kidnapper, as usually a terrible minion, is really not that bad here, just as the 5 attack.
And because he doesn't have enough spells for the Pyro Apo to clear up that much, I don't hate the look of Natalie here. Goes up to 6 HP, which is just a little bit shy of the kidnapper range.
Yeah. Like, I'm not ecstatic about it because just like any freeze instantly makes it pretty horrible, but there's not much else better I'm seeing. So I'm on board.
I think he just has to pray for a renew on the next turn to make the Pyro Apo turn a bit more palatable. Oh, wow. That's the top deck.
Yeah, okay, now I'm on board with hitting that with the Conjurer's Calling.
Oh my goodness, Walking Fountain too. I guess it doesn't even matter here, he's not rushing it in.
This is unbelievable. Look at how this has turned around for Glory, just easily representing lethal on the following turn. I thought he'd just run out. I always underestimate what Mage can generate.
Thought so too. That's the only choice, right? Okay,
It's
no,
that
sorry.
or
It's a
Pyro
dragon. He can pull the Soul Mirror now. Does that do much? You
That's
heal up
true.
for 4 with the Walking Fountain, you get a taunt.
You can then attack again with the Walking Fountain, as we
Correct.
established with the Wind Furies.
It does have Rush and Wind Fury.
Correct.
Big deal. And then he has 2 mana left remaining.
Could fit a Pyro as well, although he runs out of board space then.
Job's done.
So this does give him a decent amount while getting rid of the Kidnapper. Maybe it's just better on average without knowing whether you're guaranteed to get Soul Mirror.
It's going to take
11,
8.
26?
Oi, 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 that is close, huh?
It's super close.
So, Ray.
Oh, but if he doesn't kill the Pyros, they're both just healing for a whole bunch. So
No, I know. I'm just thinking like a decent arcane missiles can help to clear off one of them at least, and then you just trade into the other before you start going face to set up lethal.
Right.
Like my
So
dream is that you freeze the Natalie and then trade in everything else.
I felt like he would have to take this trade to give himself the best odds of clearing the Pyro.
Okay.
So there's an interesting argument for freezing this because it's at 1 health, where if Bankyugi has any
Right.
spell that doesn't buff the Pyro, then the Pyro would die. But it would still get the Apotheosis heal, so I'm not sure.
He's taking the risk. He's obviously setting up lethal if there's no powerful response from Bankyugi in terms of healing his minion, healing his health total, all of that at the same time. That's a pretty good draw to find at the start.
Yes, indeed. Oh, and that's a buff on the health of the Pyro as well. Yeah, Renew
So we're going
keeps the cycle
Sethic.
going.
Yeah. Sethic Renew. Okay, I like this.
Shield.
Yep. Shield is
Train
more health.
going. Does it go on the Pyro or the Sethic?
We decide that afterwards. We just pick it first.
Sure. You can even start with Holy Smite.
Yeah, you need to think about breakpoints, obviously.
Oh my
Oh
goodness.
my lord! This is just going to be a full clear!
It is! The Sethic is still just alive. It is a full clear. You smite and
Yeah.
raise dead on the 5/5.
That's the clear.
Oh my god.
Correct ordering as well. That was disgusting. And, I mean, you have to hand it to Bankyugi here. What a two-turn setup he made here. With either of the other lines we were looking at, Murazond or Soul Mirror, none of them came close to as good as this.
It's true. The Soul Mirror
Oh.
had its big risk. The Murazond was very unlikely to get much done, but it's a great spot with the double Pyro, double Apo, even though it doesn't clear the board. Just gives him all his health back. Stewart? Or is it Prime?
Are you that far behind where Stuart is no longer even good enough?
I guess
think I
so.
agree with Prime.
Okay.
I will crush your delusion.
It feels so horrible, but he is losing this game. If it carries out without anything unexpected happening, he has lost.
So
Miro for his own? Oh, he
I'm
can just
actually-
steal it, actually, right?
It's
Yeah.
true. I'm actually not sure if the Soul Mirror that I thought was in deck is in deck, because now I'm looking at the deck tracker and Glory has way more cards listed here than 9.
Right, okay.
So-
Yeah, I was going to say, I was like 99% sure he drew it on that turn that he played it, right, rather than generated it.
Me too. We'll try to get that started soon.
You don't pick the one, see?
Mm-hmm. Both the dragons have been played as well, I think, in the Cobalt Spellkins, so it's not even like he is likely to get an activation on that.
I mean, Glory's only out is trying to get the Prime that he shuffled at the very beginning of the game.
To dance with death?
Katrina, and then you honestly might just trade in Solarian Prime just to avoid any kind of nonsense here and try and get another one. I like it.
Yep. His Pyroblast has looked so sad.
All right, Gia.
Okay.
There it is. That's the out.
Here we go.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
I mean, they were all pretty good, but
Yeah.
we're very much in a situation where pretty good is not good enough.
Yeah, I think that needed to be a box prime for there to be really much of a chance to pull Glory back in.
Oh, imagine if there was just Box into a card that it shuffles into the deck called Box Prime. And it has 20 spells.
Oh god, please. Please no.
Well, Bankyugi just testing for CS, and Spellbender there sees that it's neither of those for you to go for Shadow Earth Death. Very simple now.
There's the Cyclone that you're probably looking at because Pyroblast, strangely enough, is no longer even big enough to kill off Katrina.
It's true. He has one shot at a box.
That's a good card. Not game-winningly good, but a decent card nonetheless.
Just putting on a clinic here is Bankyugi. It's the natural priest thing where they've won the game 5 turns prior, but they can't actually end the game until they put together the damage.
Yep. Freeze. He can stay alive on board as it currently stands. Not going to make all too much difference though because Bankyugi can just go for his own Mirror's which probably ends the game. He could even just go for Mind Render Alusha and give Glory this load of fairly unimpactful cards and still probably just end up winning. Or he could do that.
It's really saying something when you can say that giving your opponent a Murazon and Mass Res is fairly unimpactful, but it's true. Okay, Prime is the only way he can possibly lose, right? If it
Right,
casts
yeah.
blocks.
I think
So
even though
I'm
it's
fine with Muro take the Deep Freeze.
agreed, Deep Freeze always targets an enemy minion, so it's never going to go too wrong for you.
Or their face.
Or their face, sorry, yes, an enemy character.
You don't pick the one, silly.
And
Oh!
okay, that's
Nova plus
technically a
Trick.
card that can extend
Nova
the game.
plus Tome to find box or something.
Yeah.
Azure
Dragon.
to Deathwing? He has the
Uh-huh.
Nova.
Rolling Fireball isn't close to big enough to clearing this up, so Freeze is the only out, and then yep, you take your Azure Explorer.
Alex Strauss.
You take Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, which is probably active at this point. Okay.
Yep. Okay, what
And then-
dragons are good enough?
Bankyugi's board locked as well, so he can't buy anything in response.
Oh, now
Oh, no,
he's not
okay.
board locked. Okay.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so Bankyugi's gotta be thinking about Deathwing now, whether it's from the Azure itself or from
Right.
Dragon Queen into Deathwing, because every other dragon is not impactful. Maybe a Sarah Unleashed, but Glory wouldn't have another freeze to pair with it. So, uh,
So obviously you can't go Lucia here, right? That's the one thing you don't do
no.
at the start here to give your
Yeah.
opponent Prime. Like Prime into Lucia, I think is honestly game winning. Prime is probably game winning. Like everything you can do
Okay,
here
yeah.
pretty much wins the game.
Dance, puppet.
I think all he had to do is save Prime as a potential answer for the potential Deathwing,
Okay.
and now he's also just picked up Aeon Reaver as a guaranteed answer to a potential Death. So Bankyugi has all of his bases covered.
Oh, it's actually not even active yet. So we need
Oh,
another
not?
freeze effect, right?
Okay, yeah. We will get the deck tracker pick. It just got a bit messed up because of the disconnect earlier on a while ago, but now, finally, Bankyugi gets a win. It was really stressful at the end there. I hate calling a game over and then only to have the rug pulled out from under us, but thankfully it did end up being.
Yeah, the important thing being that I think Bankyugi had, even as you said with our deck tracker issues, kind of getting in the way. Just a very, very strong two-turn setup there where he got the Pyromancers down. Getting both of them at once was not something I think that a lot of players would have gone for, but it was just maximum pressure on the board, maximum healing, and honestly made it very difficult for both of them to be cleared up, which of course made way for a somewhat fortunate Sethic turn to help him along the way, but it was really his setup that even allowed that to be possible. And as I was saying, just I think a classic example of the way that Bankyugi plays the Priest matchup well, where he's just fighting against these tempo decks to try and lock down board. That definitely feels like where he is most comfortable on the deck.
It is true. Pretty brilliant to spot that the double pyro double spell. It takes all your mana and it doesn't feel like that much healing because you tend to think of things in ones, but stacked all together, it is tons of healing that he gets back. And it's 3 damage AoE, which is enough to deal with the kidnapper and enough to make it so that whether the walking fountain or the 5/7 were going to take trades, it would also die upon contact with the pyro. Really clean.
Very clean indeed. Game 2 going to Bankyugi, of course, equalizes us here in our first series of the day. Moving on now with the Rogue and the Priest having taken a win for Gloria and Bankyugi respectively. Demon Hunter up against the Mage now, which has really been a cornerstone of all of the Japanese players' strategy for the last few weeks. They've gone about it in a few different ways with Possessi, Alutemu, and Glory, all having varying amounts of success and varying builds of the deck. We've seen a Penflinger build from Alutemu at one point. We've seen Alutemu favor the Battle Fiend version of the deck recently as well. Whereas now here from Glory, we see the Consume Magic plus Horde Pillager build of the deck, which, in all honesty, I have to say, I am not the biggest fan of. If you had to compare all the different lists, I think that, in my opinion, Horde Pillager is not quite worthy of a spot.
It's true, but when you're committed to not running Magtheridon, I feel like this is the most likely substitution. From Glory's lineup, you can see that at face value, it looks like a lineup that wants to ban Warrior, but since Bankyugi did not have Warrior, it's banning Druid instead. This looks like after all of the weeks that we've gone through of experimenting with these different decks and lineups, Glory has just landed on the 4 best decks from maybe 3 weeks ago, which
Right.
was mostly looking like this type of Demon Hunter list. I don't hate it.
I don't hate it at all. I'm just, if the only differences that can exist between the lists are very small, I have to sound somewhat persnickety as I'm comparing the different lists. As personally, I think that the Penflinger version has something going for it there, or even just, like I said, Battlefiend is not terrible just to throw down in the early game. Maybe even Vulpera Scoundrel, but I guess as I run through them, none of them sound especially appetizing as tech cards. So we'll have to see for Glory. Resurrecting the Eldraki Warblades can, of course, be a big deal, but I think we can both agree that against Mage, you want to be playing the aggressor, not the defender.
It is true. You definitely want to send as many of the weapon charges face as possible and not be bothered about trying to trade off minions. So as Demon Hunter, I find it's important to have a good balance of face damage and ways to deal with the board that doesn't involve swinging your weapon. So be it Shard Shatter, Mystic, or Blade Dance. And the thing you're also never sad to see is just the early curve. I feel like that's the cherry on top for Demon Hunter when they can also just win boards.
Could not agree more. This is just an absolutely gorgeous start for Glory. Like, the only bad thing is his Shard Shatter is kind of useless because of how good his starting hand is here at this point, which you're never going to be too upset about. Bankyugi, as we can see here, I believe is going for the non-dragon build of Tempo Mage, which I think probably just about helps in this list, because you lose access to generating more spells, which obviously is not fantastic, because you can then hit Ice Barrier or Frostbolt off of the Arcane Breath. But you do get much more offensive potential. I think when you're going for Mana Giant plus Conjurer's Calling, those are the games where you can actually stand a chance of winning, rather than just occasionally outlasting the Demon Hunter.
It's true. You give yourself that other win condition of trying to race them, as opposed to trying to stall with generated Frostbolts, etc. For this turn from Bankyugi, I could just see Learn Draconic One Thief. It's interesting though, because if you go for Primordial Studies, One Thief, there might be something else that you would rather spend your mana on than Learn Draconic.
Right, so like Primordial Studies on 3 mana, the obviously only 3 mana minion you can get is Dalaran Mage, which is horrendous. It's the worst spell damage minion you can get most of the time by a significant margin. And so I wouldn't hate starting with Primordial Studies anyway, just to try and go for Wand Thief plus a 2-cost minion, like Solarian Prime or Blood Mage Thalnos. But instead prioritizing actively clearing with the King is kind of interesting.
It's true. I mean, the hand didn't give him much to do on the next turn, so that's one of the few instances where I don't mind pinging as Mage. To the extent where he's taking the most expensive minion just to give him something better to do next turn. Sorely needs a Craft Session.
Kind of backed himself into a weird spot now where Thalnos is not unplayable on this turn, because he could take a turn off from Violet Warden, but I think you would much rather just play next turn Violet Warden plus Frost, Ray of Frost if necessary.
Yeah, it's a weird outcome of the discount. Obviously, the upside for going Thalnos now is you give yourself draws toward a play you actually want to make, because I feel like as Tempo Mage, Violet Warden on curve is just kind of a consolation play where you have more powerful things to do in the deck itself, but it's nowhere near guaranteed.
Absolutely not. And now for Glory, absolutely agree with this play. Let's go face with everything we can, get the biggest board we can in play as possible. And Bankyugi, I think it probably still, leads up with the freeze plus the taunt in play. It's a strong response in terms of stopping the damage right now, but it's not board winning quite yet.
It's not. It definitely felt necessary, because if Jandice didn't hit taunts or big enough rushers there, then he was just taking minimum another 7 to the dome.
Yeah.
By which point, taunting up, you probably just lose to a Cane.
So how tempting is Shard Shatter on this turn? You can go trade Shard Shatter to deal 5, and obviously kill off the Wand Thief as well.
Yeah, I was looking at that with also Twin Slice. But if he is just going to clear the Violet Warden without putting any damage onto his Soul Shard Lapidary, this achieves a similar board state.
Yeah, it's a more survivable board, obviously, immediately, but it comes at the expense of having sunk 2 more damage into a minion rather than damage to face, because Twin Slice can go face, Shard Shatter cannot later on. I'm okay with it. I think your opponent still has like a mystery spell damage minion in hand, so Lab Partner plus Raz was definitely a possibility on that turn.
And he does actually just net himself a pretty clean Shard Shatter now. You're 100% that the illusion is on the Starving Buzzard.
Couldn't have worked out better.
Yep. Skull on the left, everything coming up, Glory.
You don't pick the one, silly.
Just hero power?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously not a guaranteed skull, because it's 50% chance to just hit Dispel Magic as well, so I think I probably would have just gone with hero power there for a bit more damage.
It's true. I mean, he did have no immediate demand for a card draw or the silent, so I was fine with just weaving in the 1 and taking your guaranteed skull on the left and saving the double jump for a turn when it was more necessary.
I believe the Bankyugi on this turn at 5 out of 8, the side quest was actually completable on this turn if you went Ray Magic Trick or Magic Trick first and see what you get. But it looks like he's maybe trying to save up for one big swing turn next turn instead.
Yeah, maybe with the power of creation. But I do like the idea of staggering threats here.
Same.
In the end, he does pick up at least a way to deal with the lapidary.
Time runs out on me.
The icicle, the two ways of dealing with the lapidary both mean that you can't get a draw off of icicle, so I would rather use the clunkier card.
Oh, it goes up to 8 out of 8. My apologies, it was at 6 out of 8 anyway. This way is definitely better than.
Okay. Well,
probably yes, but that Glavebound is looking somewhat tempting to me here. Just like Hero Power Glavebound to clear off the board.
or even Chaos Strike.
Sure, yeah.
Glavebound.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing to consider is actually, do we care about clearing the board? Because Glory, with 5 damage on board, he can get his opponent down to like 12 on this turn. You really have to consider just pushing everything to the face.
It's true. I think Glory's hand doesn't quite warrant an all-face push yet, because to get lethal across a couple more turns, he would still have to take a turn off with Skull, I think. So if we were going to see Glavebound, I do like the idea of it going on to minions.
Big draw for Bankyugi, though. The Mana Giant plus the Conjurer's Calling. Maybe not this turn, with the Power of Creation available as a decent spot, but, I mean, even having said that, you've got to clear this stuff off the board as well.
Right.
Let's just go with the Conjurer's Calling.
You can even go Ray of... Oh my goodness, what?! The Mana Giants are in the death pool, right? With
That's
the Conjurer's
correct.
Calling.
Yeah.
Hello? Double Katrina?
Oh!
Oh my goodness. What are we watching?
That was insane!
That's just counter lethal.
That's just game! Get out of here, Glory! This is Bankyugi's world now.
Is this 100% game? Twin Slice, Blade Dance. Yeah.
I mean, maybe not necessarily quite yet.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty much game next turn, but there's a small chance to survive this turn.
Okay,
At
so you have
1 HP.
4 damage pseudo AoE.
And then if it lands on the Warden, you can trade off with the Shard Shatter.
Right, yeah.
What in the world happened here? And then he's alive at 1.
Yes. 12, 20 plus the ping. Yep, that's going to leave him alive at 1 health.
Magic trick. Okay, he's
come
there's
on.
no way he's alive. There is no way he's alive.
Start with Magic Trick, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't even know what.
I mean, you could start with evolving, honestly, just stuff that gets stuff out of your hand to give you more space with evocation.
Yeah. You only need 4 damage, 4 mana maximum. Sorry, right? Because Fireball is as expensive as it gets.
Apex is less anyway.
Oh, sorry. Yes, good point. Okay, 5.
Bam! Wow, that's useless. They're 100% useless.
Yeah, that is the worst evocation I think I've ever seen.
I do not want to conch these Katrinas. They're rezzing from a great pool right now.
Is it really just ping Cram Session Pass?
Time runs out on me.
I think he's in a great spot still.
Yes, me too.
So yeah, I'm down. I mean, okay, whatever. He did just get better minions. But the thing is, the Katrina is 2 minions by itself because of the end of turn effect, so I didn't see much point in conjuring it.
Oh my god, that's so disgusting. If you can get Twin Slice here, is there any chance? Not really. Wow, the unfavourable going Bankyugi's way in an absolutely disgusting fashion, quite clearly, with the
Ludicrous.
double Katrina into nothing at all to be done for Glory. I don't think that, I mean, obviously after that point, it was all just lights out for Glory. Before then, I don't think there was an especially better chance he could have got for himself by going for a more aggressive approach. I think he pushed the damage when he had to. That one turn with the glaive bound was maybe the most difficult turn. Not to say that it was wrong what he went for, because I think trying to lock down the board there was probably quite reasonable.
It's true. I think both lines had their merits. I was interested in Skull to make sure that the damage would be consecutive from that point onward. And I also was not a fan of the double jump instead of hero power the turn he went
Yeah.
for it. But it's very minor things that would not have changed the outcome of that game, given that it was double Katrina into the two best minions in Bankyugi's pool. I've never seen anything like it.
It was disgusting. Perhaps payback for generating Grom, getting Wind Fury Harpy, top decking the perfect for lethal.
Yes.
We'll call it even Stevens then. And go back to a kind of baseline level of luckiness for both players. A single game away, though, is Bankyugi now from going through to the winners bracket match to face off against Surrender. I mean, you couldn't really ask for a harder day of Hearthstone, to be honest, for Bankyugi if he takes the win here, taking on Glory and then Surrender, and very possibly one of them again if he ends up going down to the losers bracket match after taking the loss in the finals. We'll have to see, though. He still has to get the final win here, and it is with, undeniably, the most contentious deck of his lineup. The Highlander Rogue is the final remaining deck for Bankyugi to get a win with against Demon Hunter or Mage.
Oh yes, this is the deck we've been leading up to all day. When we have our testing as a caster group, we tend to try and cycle around a couple different decks, but the meta has settled for the most part, so we were just jamming Highlander Rogue for the majority of last night. And it is going up against Demon Hunter first. I feel like the type of rogue that can get bigger minions more consistently would be more favored against Demon Hunter. But it remains to be seen whether the consistent way of getting big minions is by running double questings, or is it by just running a curve in your deck like Highlander Rogue does.
Yeah, this deck has a deceptively powerful curve because it's easy to call it a Highlander deck and say, oh, that's the definition of inconsistency because you only run one of each card. You're unlikely to find the good cards. But the curve it's over half of the deck is 1 and 2 mana cards, so it's incredibly low curving. You're almost guaranteed to find the early plays, but you're not guaranteed to find the power spikes that come in the form of Zephrys the Great, which honestly is pretty tempting to just throw down right now.
Oh yes, I mean, the way you describe Highlander Rogue reminds me a lot of Highlander Hunter, which is, you know, it's considered an aggressive deck, even though it has the inconsistency of one-ofs. But because you just run so many cards that kind of substitute each other for their mana cost, then it tends to end up getting on board pretty consistently in the end. But this Zephrys into the Wild Growth, into Shield of Galakron is, I think, impossible to turn down.
Yeah, impossible to turn down, but not impossible to beat, because Glory's own hand is looking pretty impressive right now. Is this ever a deviation from Bankyugi?
I did a game in testing before you joined us, Derek. I'm glad that your migraine is all better now. Where I did deviate from the curve. I went something like Underbelly because I had it active from Zephrys into Wild Growth, and I regretted everything in my life. I just did not have time to play Wild Growth for the rest of the game. To be fair, though, that was in the Rogue Mirror, I believe. And there are dead turns for Demon Hunter before they get to their Lapidary play.
Oh, this is so weird. Like, he does have ways to spend all his mana for the foreseeable future. Like, Dirty Trick's Cult Neophyte into Galakron is very powerful in terms of a couple of turns. Yeah, is it better than going for Wild Growth? Like, Dirty Tricks gets him more cards, which likely gets him a bigger Edwin, but Wild Growth gets him more mana, which gets him a better Edwin as the game progresses as well. It's so many different factors here.
I agree. I think I still would have ended on Wild Growth there just to make sure Shield of Galakron comes down as soon as possible. I think the big factor for Bankyugi is that he just didn't feel his Underbelly fence would be active in the near future if he went for Wild Growth there. He nets himself board presence now and maybe 3 additional damage early on, but it comes at the cost of missing out turn 4.
Well, to be fair to Bankyugi, a decent... Ooh. Okay, I was going to say that Cult Neophyte is a decent play a lot of the time, because it can block out the coin, most importantly. The only thing that you're very weak to is just a straight-up Marrow Slicer, I would say, most of the time. And because of that, he's just going to be going with the 2 into 2 anyway, because he just doesn't want Polkelt minions off the top.
I think I may have overreacted at the quality of this Polkelt. It gets you Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, very far from being able to play that.
Fair enough.
And later on Galakron, where
You don't
he's not
pick
played
the
any
one.
invokes, only has the 1 invoke in hand. But Polkelt could be huge later on, make no mistake.
That's a weird one, because he wanted to play the Spirit Jailer, but I think that's kind of just better right now. Like, having 2 of them as 2/4s is pretty big, actually.
It's fair, and he can still go like Jailer Coin Lapidary the next turn if
Yeah.
he really wanted to.
I like it here.
Yeah. It also, if he thinks this is plagiarized, puts a useless spell in
True.
Bankyugi's hand.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
And Bankyugi runs 1 of each secret except them.
Well, Edwin is not quite big enough yet, in my estimation. The only...
Happening again! The wild growth is getting stuck!
Yeah, it does kind of look that way, doesn't it? Unless he wants to go Wild Growth Hanar, which sounds bad.
It sounds bad, but it gives you more Edwin potential. Oh, not even that much. You go up to 7, right? And then you would
Yeah.
still end up with like Rain Freeze Edwin and hope to draw a 2-cost card.
This is the problem, of
Maybe.
course, with Bankyugi's line, is that just playing Shield on 5 is extremely weak to Demon Hunter, because Soul Shard Lapidary slash Hero Power with the Glaive, the Marrow Slicer, sorry, are both very, very efficient at clearing this off.
It's huge. Oh, the cursed wild growth. It makes me so sad to look at.
Ooh, that makes me happy,
Okay.
though. That's a little more like it.
So, if he had 1 more mana, this would be really clean.
Yeah, agreed.
Because you definitely want to freeze the 5/5, and you would ideally want to step the Titanic Lackey. But you don't have a target to step unless it's Hanar, but then that's 7 mana altogether. So,
I mean, you know, we could get 1 more mana next turn. We could have 2 more mana next turn if he wanted to here as Bankyugi. Like, this does not have to be the Edwin turn quite yet, right?
true.
Is what I provide.
That's gonna put the Dragon Queen Alexstrasza at the top, followed by Heist Baron, Kronks, or Flick, because the Galakron is in hand right now.
Mm-hmm. In which case, Galakron on the next turn does become pretty powerful now, right? This is not something I was expecting, though. Interesting.
Well, stepping the Lackey means that he will guaranteed get Alex off of the natural draw.
Yeah.
So if you go Galakron and get Togwaggle for free, he can go Titanic and... Oh, sorry.
It costs 1.
1 mana off. In the near future, then.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that's still very, very powerful and definitely a valid point.
Yeah. He's holding on to the Lackey for Tog, is what I've been.
Makes sense to me. I mean, it's not the way I would have gone about it, because I think in the end I probably would have just ended up on an Edwin turn because I'd be too afraid to do anything else. But this is kind of smart from Bankyugi. Like, it's setting up for a massive Edwin later on down the line, and also doing very impactful but very defensive stuff in the meanwhile. That big Polkelt took a lot of resources to get through there.
True, but this is gonna be a lot of damage. It does end up with the Tog, so the draw off the top next turn is either Flick or Kronks.
And then he gets the next 3 cards for 0 mana, which is going to be Jandis, the other 6 mana card, and either Lillian or Vendetta. Obviously, hopefully the Lillian on that one. But, you know, powerful stuff on the other hand. Very, very powerful.
It feels like a near guaranteed board clear on the next turn. So, gotta be good for Bankyugi. However, our cameras are frozen here.
No, I disagree. I think this is actually a perfect live feed of what we're getting from the players right now, Gia. They're just so tense at the prospect of going through to the World Championships. They literally cannot move. It's a slow turn from Glory, and it is going to be anything but a slow turn. Did I say Bankyugi? I meant Glory. And slow turn, a very fast turn from Bankyugi here, because, oh my goodness, he can just start doing turbo powerful stuff in the next few turns.
Clear the board with Kronks. He can go for Tog now, I would imagine. I just want a 5/5 on the board with the Titanic.
Yeah.
Float a mana, but then you can do the Edwin turn next turn with the Wand.
Yeah, you need to be worried about Blade Dance, I suppose, but I guess if that board gets Blade Danced, then it's not the Edwin board that's being hit with the Blade Dance, unless there's two of them, exactly.
There's an argument for saving all of the stuff for one super wide turn, which does play around Blade Dance a little bit better too. But if the Blade Dance is not there, then it's, I mean, you just get the 5 attack base, right?
Wow, the crown!
Ooh,
Really?
I'm shocked! I am shocked!
Really?
I wanted a free Jandis!
Yeah, like, he hasn't shuffled his deck, has he, at this point? Like,
No!
Okay, fair enough. Let's see what it delivers. I do think this is probably incorrect. Like, I know that Bankyugi has played more of the deck here, but this feels really unnecessary considering how powerful you would get. Like, one of them is guaranteed to be Vendetta. I think if he played it on this turn, it would be guaranteed Vendetta, Jandis, Lillian. But that's still probably just better.
It is. I think it's... I don't know the average stats on a legendary minion, but it doesn't feel that much higher than Jandis plus Lillian. And the Vendetta lets you clear the minion on the other side. Ah! And then Lackey Edmund, okay, looking for taunt now at this point, I would assume. This does somewhat lead up into an Alexstrasza curve, but so did the Wand. And this is so much damage. How much is this?
8, 9, 12?
Oh man. I guess you take the 5 damage Blade Dance and hope it hits the Tauruses.
Yeah. If you don't have lethal here with the glaive bound, I think you just don't take it. He can think about trying to maximize his odds. Like, I don't think you're hero powering down anything first, and you know, even if the Blade Dance does hit the Edwin, you could then trade the 3/2 into it, which is the world.
The only awkward thing about this is that he has to float more, and I think that holding Glaive Bound as opposed to Twin Slice removes some of his out from the top.
Yeah.
But it would have to involve Bankyugi generating a taunt or healing this turn, and Glory has seen Zephyrus already.
Okay, number of dragons that can just pretty much instantly end the game here. Obviously, Nazari, Amber Watcher, Evasive Draconid is devastating for Glory. Oh my goodness.
So we're looking for Kayn. Can't target it with Consume. Oh no! If he takes 7, he's just dead next turn. So he can't take 7.
There's no way that he can set it up otherwise, right?
Nope.
Oh my god, he would have been so close. I mean, he still wouldn't have had the game, obviously, quite yet, because he wouldn't have had mana to do it, but he could have set it up for the next turn, potentially.
He still gives himself a Kayn out by waiting. I think it's absolutely correct. But it is so unlikely from this point. Bankyugi, all he has to do is Wild Growth for Cycle.
Cycle the Wild Growth. It was the nuts all along. We just didn't know it. No, you don't need the Vendetta here. Let's cycle to look for a secret. Right? That's the only thing that you want here is a secret.
Maybe another Taunt Lackey doesn't really help against the only out. There's also just looking for lethal with Shadows. Oh wait, sorry, the deck is not it's arranged. He knew what he was getting off the top. But Lillian is GG! Oh my god!
You know what, Bankyugi? That was an excellent way to end things out. He knew the order of the deck. He knew that was guaranteed lethal at that point to draw a card. I think the only thing he was missing was the Vendetta would have become unactivated, which is what he was actually looking for. So Bankyugi was like 10 steps ahead of us at the end there with looking at for that lethal. Very nicely done, and a spectacular way to head through to the finals to be going up against Surrender in bracket A for today. What a class performance from Bankyugi, even if there were some weird decisions along the way with the wild growth, whether or not he should have gone for it. It worked out brilliantly for him.
That was a really tough endgame for Glory. I was talking about how not playing Glavebound removes some of the outs from the top tier, but it would still have to have involved Bankyugi generating a taunt, and also if Glory left up an additional 5 damage, he was also dead to certain combinations of cards. I believe it's really tough to put them on having the exact combination of things you're meant to play around, even if the deck is ordered, because they can generate lackeys at any point after Galakrond was picked. I do think that was a lot scarier than it needed to be. I think the game could have ended a turn sooner if Bankyugi had gone for Wand into a bigger Edwin, but he just knows how to keep us on our toes.
Yeah,